So, today we're digging into a pretty gripping mystery. During the COVID-19 crisis, huge sums of money were earmarked for emergency relief in the Indian state of Meghalaya. The big question is, where did all that money actually end up?
This one question really just cuts right to the chase, doesn't it? Was this money a lifeline for people who desperately needed it, or was it treated like a jackpot for a select few? This gets right to the absolute heart of the matter.
Okay, so let's talk numbers. The initial figure that kicked this whole thing off is, well, it's staggering. Over 43 crore rupees. That's more than 5 million US dollars. But here's the really crucial part. This number was uncovered by just one activist before any official audits even began. That suggests this could just be the tip of the iceberg.
So let's get into our first section, a lifeline or a jackpot. To really get what allegedly went wrong here, we first have to understand how these funds are supposed to work, especially during a massive crisis like the COVID pandemic.
Now, this wasn't just some random pot of government money. It came from very specific places, like the State Disaster Response Fund, or SDRF, and it came with really clear rules. This money was meant for one thing: urgent relief. We're talking food, medicine, and shelter for people who are in a truly desperate situation.
And that, of course, brings us right back to that central mystery. For the average person, the citizen this money was actually supposed to help, there's almost zero visibility into how it was spent. Who got the contracts? What was bought and for how much? And, the most important question of all, did any of it actually get to the people who needed it?
All right, section 2. This is where it gets really interesting. We're calling this the corruption playbook. Because according to investigators, this wasn't just some random chaotic mess. Instead, it seems to have followed a very clear pattern, a playbook with 3 core ways to misuse these funds.
So the playbook, as alleged, has 3 basic steps. First, you dramatically overprice essential supplies. Second, you create fake bills for things that never even existed. And third, you find and exploit loopholes in the rules. Let's break each one of these down.
Check this out. This chart really shows you the first method in action, overpricing. On the left, you've got the typical market price for critical stuff like PPE kits. But on the right, the price the government allegedly paid was 2, 3, sometimes even 5 times higher. And these contracts, they often went to preferred vendors. It's probably the most direct way you could siphon off funds.
Okay, method number 2 is, wow, it's even bolder. We're talking about creating ghosts in the system. Bills were supposedly submitted for things like quarantine centers, food packages, and transportation services that either never existed at all or were just a tiny fraction of what was actually claimed on paper. It's basically billing for phantom relief. Now, the third method is a little more clever, a little more subtle. See, the rules say that up to 10% of that state disaster response fund can be used for smaller, local disasters, like a flood or landslide. This is meant to give officials some flexibility, but this gray area was allegedly exploited to its fullest, with funds being diverted for vaguely defined local disasters using some very creative invoicing.
Okay, so that's the alleged problem. But how on earth do you even begin to uncover something like this? I mean, with so much secrecy, how can anyone find the truth? That brings us to section 3, how to track the money. The story now shifts from the problem to the solution, a kind of investigative toolkit for citizens.
Trying to get through all those layers of bureaucracy, it seems absolutely daunting, right? But the answer actually lies in a pretty systematic, step-by-step process.
And this is the exact process the activists used to uncover that 43 crore figure. First, you file Right to Information, or RTI, requests to get the official spending data. Second, you take those official prices and compare them with what things actually cost on the open market. And third, and this is the most powerful step, you ground truth the claims. You physically go to the villages and ask people directly, hey, what did you actually receive?
All right, for our fourth section, let's pull the camera back a bit and look at the bigger picture. Because what allegedly happened in Meghalaya might not just be an isolated incident. It actually fits into a global pattern, one where some people see a crisis not as a tragedy, but as a business opportunity.
There's actually a name for this concept. It's called the shock doctrine, a theory put forward by author Naomi Klein. The idea is that during moments of major crisis, a pandemic, a war, a natural disaster, the public is so shocked and disoriented that a small elite can push through all sorts of opaque deals and policies that enrich themselves. People are just too busy trying to survive to pay close attention.
And boom, that's how this theory connects right back to our story.
Money that was meant for survival can, in the blink of an eye, get diverted and become just another revenue stream for corrupt networks. The emergency itself provides the perfect cover.
So that brings us to our final section, and really the most fundamental question of all. These were called relief funds, but who was actually getting the relief? And that's the thought I really want to leave you with. Did this money, sent in a time of absolute desperate need, truly relieve the suffering of citizens, or did it only serve to relieve the financial hunger of those who saw a jackpot where everyone else saw a disaster? That is the question at the very heart of this entire mystery.